Mr. Conor McKeon, come on in. Hello.
Hello, Joe Malloy. How are you?
Good, not as good as you, I suspect. It's just after 7 a.m. Augusta time on Wednesday, and you've been there a couple of days now. Go on, don't lie to us. How good has it been?
Great. Yeah, it's actually the earliest of ever, earliest of the 3 years that I've gotten there. We were here on site on Sunday, and that's a lovely day. I can't recommend it highly enough. The drive, chip and putt, and it has been all very pleasant so far. It kind of lacked a bit of punch in the early part of the week.
The drive,
Later
chip,
weeks,
and putt lacked a bit of punch.
no, no,
Fair. I mean, they're
Masters.
just kids, Connor. They're just kids.
The Masters week lacked a small bit of punch until yesterday when Rory McIlroy sort of lit it up a small bit with his press conference and word of his play kind of filtered around Augusta, but it's kind of building up nicely. Yesterday was the day when all the big guys did their media interviews, and just before that you get the timings like the groups. So the tournament is kind of honing into view now, and not before time.
Weather looks beautiful as well. Forecast is good.
Really good, Jeff. Sunday we got here was quite overcast, and it's been cold enough just in the morning. But it's almost like if you had to kind of biochemically engineer a week of major golf, this is the way you do it. I think it's supposed to get even better at the weekend, and it's good to see because there's a couple of times when there have been draws that have been favourable and sort of the opposite to golfers with big wins. Remember here a couple of years ago when Scotty Scheffler won one of the days, there was sort of wind flying out of bunkers, and it was interminable. It was slow. It was just a drag, but it doesn't look like that at all this week. It looks like it's going to be clear skies, and one of those sort of very picture postcard masters that tends to happen more often than not.
Yeah. Curious, by the way, there is an extraordinary political backdrop to life in America just now. And even over here, I think a lot of us, we were saying earlier in the podcast, had the experience of waking up and quickly checking if the world had ended. Is any of that madness infiltrating the property at Augusta National?
Absolutely not. And it was something that I was conscious of yesterday when I was talking to people at home, like from the office, saying, what's the general vibe over there about the whole impending Armageddon? And I was saying, well, I don't know. I've been out on the course for the last 5 hours, and I think at the best of times, obviously the no phones rule means that people are in quite a bubble. What I sense that, and I'm finding this quite fascinating, that as a and bear in mind this is only my personal experience, but like generally speaking, the conversation about what is going on with Trump and Iran, and the whole very fickle sort of geopolitical, it's a bigger topic of conversation in Ireland than it is in America. Like the fact that this is happening sort of at the hands of their president doesn't seem to really land. It's something that's happening in a foreign country. And I was kind of reading over some of the American media this morning just to see, and there's nobody in it is kind of nobody explains why this might be happening. It's just about whether they're going to keep going with this assault, whether they're going to pull back. And like we have CNBC on here, and like every story is, markets recover as Trump calls off invasion of Iran. And it's just so strange that the sort of nitty gritty reasons for this, that they're not being explored all the time, that people aren't talking about it on every street corner. And it is quite striking because we went out yesterday for a while in the afternoon with that in mind. And, Tuesday at the Masters is very, very leisurely. Nobody is kind of following anybody hurriedly around. You're eavesdropping on lots of conversations. And, as one of my colleagues noted, we were walking together. We didn't hear one mention of that, but we did hear several sentences start with the phrase "my ex-wife." So it's a very different kind of a set here in Augusta, and it is one of these places where there's a bubble. That's what it is, and it's always been like that. But even outside it, we were at a dinner last night, and there are a lot of American journalists, and I was asking them about them, and their general sense is that American people are a little bit detached from all of this.
That tallies interestingly. We won't go too far down this route, obviously, but Rory Stewart, the former Tory MP turned podcast behemoth alongside Alistair Campbell, was in the US very recently, a couple of different US campuses and full of academics, and he was very struck by just the lack of interrogation of what's happening from very smart, clued-in people, and contrasted that with being in America on the eve of the Iraq War in '03, when people were agonizing about the rights and wrongs and where it stood legally, international law. And he said this complete, not a lack of interest, but a lack of rigor or depth in terms of the way it's been talked about. So
it's more extreme even than that, Joe, though. Like, and I find it really odd that whatever about interrogation, it's just an absence of like critical thought, and in some case curiosity. You know, like if your country, and obviously people are inured to this, but like if your country was the one that was kind of sparking this off and trying to cause it, you would be invested in some way. And like my sense from being around here, and it's only one town in Georgia, is that people are just too consumed with their daily business to care.
Yeah. Well, look, people don't want to hear us talking about it anymore, I suspect. You mentioned there that word got around about Rory's practice round. I'm presuming that's because it was very good as opposed to very bad?
Yeah, so he went out yesterday morning at 7:30, which is before basically people are allowed on the course. So he got kind of like a hole and a half in before anybody even saw him. And I caught him on 4. We went out specifically to see him, and he was making serious tracks. He was out on his own, just himself and Harry Diamond. And when I caught him, he was raking a bunker on 4, and putting to different parts of the green as the players do here. And we were watching him on 5. He sort of missed a short birdie putt. Then on 6, I was starting to think, because like my suspicion, I'm gonna just preface this by saying my suspicion here this week was that Rory is not going to go well. That he's here on, even if he doesn't know it, and not deliberately, a bit of a lap of honor. And on 6, that par 3, he stuck one short into the bunker. And then he teed up again and he stuck another one short, didn't go into the bunker. And, you're always looking at body language, but obviously Rory's so expressive. And he was talking to Harry about, whatever mechanics of the swing he wasn't happy with. And I remember watching him on the practice range last year, and himself and Harry were just looking at the TrackMan numbers as they were flashing up after every swing. And you could just tell by the two of them that they were really happy with technically how his game was, whatever about was in his head. And I was looking at it yesterday saying, well, look, he hasn't played much competition lately. This is a big week. There's a lot of drain on his time and energy. And then he just took off. He stitched it to a couple of feet on 11. Then at 12, where people congregate anyway, because it's a great place to watch. It's right down on that amen corner, and people are sitting there all day. He was the first person through onto 12 all day. And like, there hasn't been a hole in one on 12 since 1988. And he put it to, again, within, it's hard to tell from where we were standing, but like, it definitely rolled within a couple of inches of the hole and left himself about a foot for birdie. And then on 13, which I suppose his round, one of the holes, his round became synonymous with last year on Sunday. He hit this kind of buttery iron from the middle of the fairway, and he put it to about 8 feet, which would have been an eagle. Now, he left the putt short, but like in that kind of snapshot, he was so at his ease, like so at his ease. And it was impossible not to watch it and think, whatever else happens to him this week, he's totally on top of his game. And then like he pulled that driver everywhere, which was something then that he reiterated in the press conference afterwards, that he's going to try and be more aggressive on certain holes. If you're going, he said, if you're going to take out 5 wood or 3 wood and miss it, it's left or right, you may as well be further down the fairway anyway. So I think he has it in his head. I think it almost looked like his strategy has been decided for him this week, that there's no second guesses. And then he came into the press conference, and it's always been with Rory here, what's going on in his head? Can he silence the kind of demons and scar tissue and blah, 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 blah? But he is so, and like, I don't want to over sort of state this or over kind of ham it up, but like, he's so comfortable here this week. Like, you could see it on Sunday during the drive, chip and putt. He moved around the place so comfortably. It's a big year for him, because when you think of Rory, like, it's hard to think of him as an outsider in any kind of golf sense. But at Augusta, effectively, he is. Like, he didn't get into the champions locker room until this year. He couldn't bring his dad out as a guest on the Sunday beforehand, which is a right reserved only for defending Masters champions. He was almost giddy yesterday about being at the champions dinner. So all this stuff, like when you think back over the years where Rory has guessed and second guessed his preparations, when will I go to Augusta? Will I play the par three? Will my family come? The week is just laid out from this year. He doesn't have any decisions to make. And I thought the two most telling quotes that he came out with yesterday, and I know you played some of this already, but the first one was, in previous years, I've been very angsty about waiting for the tournament to start. Whereas this year, I don't care if it never starts. And I knew what he meant. And then the other thing he was asked was, what do you see as being the biggest sort of danger to you not doing yourself justice this week? And I think the question was phrased in a way that he was inviting an answer to say, well, I have a lot of responsibility this week and it could be a drain of my time. And Rory just said the other 90 golfers in the field. And that's a complete juxtaposition to what we usually say about Rory at Augusta, that it's all about him overcoming himself. And between those two experiences, watching him play whatever it was, 10, 11 holes yesterday, and then seeing his press conference, I just came away from it thinking he's going to have a good week. Like, and whether it's good enough to sort of do it again, that's not going to depend on him. It could depend on Bryson DeChambeau. It could depend on Scotty Scheffler. But I just see this as being a good week for Rory McIlroy. I can't see how it's not.
Okay, very good. There is that stat: 5 of the last 6 Masters winners have won multiple times that year. 9 of the past 12 have won at least one tournament worldwide before Augusta. McIlroy obviously ticked those boxes last year. This year comes in, I don't think you could say drastically undercooked. 5 tournaments this year versus 6 last year. However, the back injury, the 3 weeks off, he had played 2 weeks out last year. There was that small question mark, but that's promising what you saw yesterday. Like, his stats are all very good. Tee to green, almost as ever, he's in the top handful on both fronts, off the tee and approach play on tour. The putting hasn't been electric. That was the one thing Brandel Chambly mentioned to us last week as well. Putting hasn't been electric, but of course that can catch fire very, very easily. So his 18th Masters, we'll see how he goes. You went out on Monday morning when you arrived at the course and caught Shane Lowry around Amen Corner, and he dumped a few in the water, so you left him alone. That the gist?
Yeah, we did.
Much like Alan Shipnuck behind Rory McIlroy at a driving range, just your sheer presence irked him.
We didn't know that, so it was early on Monday, and there was nobody else. There was nobody on the course, and a couple of us decided we'd take a walk down. It's the first day you're allowed on the course. On Sunday, you can go out and watch the drive, chip and putt, but that's only up around 18. So the course is cordoned off. So it was kind of a bit of a Monday morning pilgrimage. We'll just walk up to 10 and then walk straight down to Amen Corner. And halfway down 11, we saw 2 golfers in the middle of the fairway, and it was Shane Lowry and Ryan Fox. And like, almost as we sort of put 2 and 2 together and figured out that it was Shane Lowry, we saw him stick one in the lake to the left of 11. Now, when I say in the lake, I mean like into the middle of the lake. And then he took out another shot, and of course stitched it, as all pro golfers are able to do in their second one. And then on 12, where like the same hole where Rory nearly holed the shot yesterday, people be familiar with the Jordan Spieth miss short right, which is absolute treachery. And so we're starting to think this doesn't look great. And then on 13, himself and Ryan Fox were both wearing black tops and black bottoms. And kind of from a distance, it was hard to figure out who was who. And one of them put it in the water on 13 as well, but thankfully it turned out to be Ryan Fox. And Lowry put 2 great balls close to the hole. So with stuff to do, and we kind of went for a wander. And then it goes to show you, like, we met a couple of colleagues later on who said, did you see Lowry? And I threw my eyes up to heaven saying, yeah, it doesn't look great, does it? And they said, oh, we caught him for the last 4 holes, and he was absolutely stitching the ball next to the flag. So I think whatever little small glitches seem to work themselves out. But he only played 9 holes on Monday. He was out again yesterday with a big... It's interesting how they practice, and I don't know sort of the logic behind it, but like, Rory went out yesterday on his own to zoom around. You could tell he wanted to hit every shot, hit shots to every part of the green, get off the course and get his stuff done. Whereas Lowry went out in a 4-ball yesterday in the afternoon, and I don't know how many holes they played, but if they were to play 18 holes, it probably would have taken them 5-6 hours, you know. So it's like, they all get something different out of practices afterwards. Shane spoke yesterday, kind of an organized media interview for the Irish journalists here, and he seemed to be pretty optimistic, you know, about giving it a run this week. He spoke about acceptance, which was an interesting word to use from him, because he's never been he's never been great to forgive himself when he's made mistakes. You know, when he finished it last year with the big blow up at the end of Saturday, you know, a decent round on Sunday would have still put him in a top 10, whereas it kind of let it affect him. So it was interesting that he used that kind of phraseology yesterday, because he does tend to beat himself up. And I suppose if Rory's Sunday proved anything here, is it's not really about mistakes. It is really the cliche thing of not making a second one, or figuring out how to respond to it. So
well, I suppose with Shane, there's no doubt he can get himself in contention. This is his 11th Masters, best finish is third. Obviously, last year, I mean, Rory kind of dominates in your thinking, but you can't forget just how in the mix Lowry was on Saturday into Sunday. He was in sixth place and had a very bad Sunday. So he has really learned how to play this place, and there's a lot of aspects of his game which are well suited to it. The big question for Shane going in is not so much can he get himself into contention, but based on what happened this year in the Middle East, and then in particular at the Cognizant, which I'm sure has left a degree of scar tissue, it's if he's in contention or in the lead with 2, 3, 4, 5 holes to play. The last time we saw him in that position, it didn't go very well. It's not to say it couldn't go well this time around, but even he, I'm sure, will have that question mark in his mind.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think this is the perfect place not to think about that until it happens, and it might never happen. You know, like there's so much sort of concentration required just to keep yourself around. I heard an interesting description of the Masters from one of the caddies. Can't remember his name. He's Mark Leishman's caddy, but he said it's like the opposite of a US Open, where you have to kind of go out and score early and then hang on for dear life. At the Masters, you just really have to hang around and wait for Sunday, and then it's all about who makes the most out of the various pin positions on Sunday, and who makes the most out of other people making mistakes when they have to go after pins.
I like it's what makes that back nine so amazing. I mean, every Sunday, I mean, that there is such opportunity and such jeopardy with all the water, but the more generous pin placements. I mean, it's just such a good cocktail.
You have to remind yourself too, Joe. I don't know about you, but like because I watch like golf regularly, you're used to interpreting scoreboards and saying, well, he's 5 ahead, he's going to win the tournament. There's no point in watching this. And I'd say if you did a graphic of what the tournament looked like after 9 holes on Sunday versus what it was at the end for the last 20 years, it would kind of blow your mind. It really is a mad thing to see. But you know, there's a lot of talk over here about Bryson DeChambeau. I don't know. I don't know whether that kind of translates as much. That a lot of us sort of find it hard to countenance the idea that we came all the way to Georgia to watch Bryson DeChambeau win a green jacket. There's a lot of talk about Scotty Scheffler, because he only kind of revealed the other day publicly that his wife had given birth to their second child. There had been no kind of formal announcement, and his form had been a bit so-so anyway. So I suppose in the absence of any kind of like dominant force, which Scheffler is, but hasn't been lately, it's there for quite a few people, and that's kind of what kind of teases it up so nicely.
Well, it's very open, isn't it? It's as open as it's been in some time. One of the issues with Scheffler's swing seemed to be, and this is Brandel Chambly's analysis, certainly cupped and across the line, but short. You know, his swing had shortened down, whether he was injured or I'd seen Paul McGinley say that can point to a lack of confidence sometimes. You can have a look at him later, and we'll know certainly on Thursday and get the expert analysis. But just watching the few bits on the range I saw of Scotty, there's nothing short about his golf swing this week. So, you know,
no, but
a few holes in, we could suddenly go, Scotty's here. So that is always the possibility. But right now, it feels very open.
Yeah, and like, you know, you could watch guys on the range, and sometimes it's instructive and sometimes it's not, because you know.
Now the Chambly analysis was actually him on the range with Randy Smith. But I do take your point.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, from where you're sitting here behind them, it all looks so pretty, you know. But the thing that a lot of people are saying, the Scheffler conversation around here is more about his general demeanor. So he's been in tournaments where he's been sort of missing putts and doing this kind of fake fist pump, and he's been just very kind of negative looking about when his game is not good. He's very intolerable of mediocrity. That's probably Scotty Scheffler's one of his many, many talents, is that he just cannot tolerate not being good at a thing. Like, even when he wasn't a good putter, he wouldn't entertain the conversation about him not being a good putter. He would sort of skirt around it until he became a world-class putter. So he's clearly somebody who can like process his own sort of shortcomings or weaknesses at a particular time. but they get him down. And the conversation among very experienced Scheffler kind of watchers around here is that he's quite crappy. He's a little bit kind of grumpy, and he seems to be taking it out on everybody, including himself. Which is,
listen, for a guy who in every press conference now preaches serenity, not being defined by golf, he is a cranky so-and-so. It's not going well. You know, it's all, oh no, it doesn't define me. It sure does. Like when it's not going well, his body language betrays him. So if World War III isn't being talked about, I suspect Tiger Woods is being talked about here, there and everywhere across the property. I was very struck in the press conferences by the extent to which Tiger Woods was not mentioned in a single question I saw. Was that a dispatch from the powers that be at Augusta National? You are not to ask about Tiger Woods?
No, not at all. And like the Tiger conversations are a bit like, you know, when did you get over? What flight did you come on? Like it's an inevitability with every person that you meet here, but everybody is kind of so. I suppose if it happened last week as opposed to the week before, we'd still be trying to get our head around what happened. But I don't know that there's any. I don't know that there's anything new or any news in the whole thing.
Would people not be very curious to know what Rory McIlroy makes of what's happened to Tiger Woods, given their friendship?
Yeah, I thought so as well. And like there was a few questions. I had a couple of questions for Rory yesterday that were more about how many times how many rounds he's played since last year. But I think they were tied into a 13-minute sort of press conference, and everybody had a question. So it was literally kind of first come, first serve.
Sir, you're. I know the answer. Were you like that? And no.
No, you have to be kind of a little bit nonchalant, like it's kind of just a little tip of the finger sort of thing. And
okay, like an auction.
Yeah, a bit like an auction like that.
And but, you didn't get the call up.
No, not quite yesterday, but
fair enough.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. I think there was so much said about Tiger, in the sort of 2 weeks before this, and maybe at the very, very start of the week. And I think everybody is kind of really eager to get into the guts of this tournament. It is one of the many great selling points of the Masters is that we're all very malnourished of some serious golf because it's been so long since the last major.
It's true.
And even by the time we got to yesterday, people were going, "Geez, the week is dragging. Can we get to the tournament?" You know, as I said, like when the groupings came out, there was a bit of a frisson around the place. You know, it's that kind of like sharp reminder that the Masters is starting here on Thursday. So it's a little bit like the World War III situation, Joe. When you're here, it's very hard not to be sort of very self-contained as to what it is actually going on here. And the stuff that isn't going on here doesn't sort of register nearly the same way.
Well, I think even just the lack of phones slows down the pace of the news cycle inevitably, doesn't it, for people? We had an email in from Harry. I'll get your final broad thoughts on this whole thing in a moment. Harry said, Joe and team, as we quickly approach the best weekend in golf, I'm writing in the hope that you and your team might help investigate a question I've always been curious about. How much does it cost to use the Augusta National Tournament payphones? A long-standing curiosity of mine is, how much would it cost to call home to Ireland? Perhaps Conor McKeon could investigate for the Indo Sport podcast team this week. Best regards, Harry.
I will go down today. We'll be down. We were watching them yesterday, people making phone calls. I don't know that they cost anything. I think they're free, but I'll confirm that when I'm down there. That is a serious investigative journalism question, and I'm actually ashamed that I don't know the answer offhand.
If you could leave me a voicemail just detailing things that you're seeing, thoughts, then maybe we can replay it on the podcast at a later date.
Would you want me to phone in from one of them? That could be an interesting podcast.
That would be amazing. Are you in the draw? Sorry, this is a stupid question. When will you find out if you've won the draw to play the course on Monday?
The draw hasn't opened yet. I think it is due to be open today, and I think they close it on Friday. So it's not as if, like, you know, I've barely been paying attention. I don't really mind. You know, it's not something that's consuming my every thought or anything like that.
Dear. Have you packed your golf clothes, glove, your rangefinder? It's all there.
You're starting to jinx me, Joe. I'm not appreciating this.
Well, listen, can I just say, I think I am in no doubt you're going to win the draw and play on Monday.
Thanks,
I would never try and jinx you. It's a lock-in. It's a lock-in. It's guaranteed. Obviously, if you do play Augusta on Monday, I'll never speak to you about it. I don't want to know. I don't want to hear, etc.
I think we've scheduled a 3-parter for next week, have we?
Yeah. And then there was just a gust of wind, and it's very. You don't appreciate it unless you're in the fairway. So, well, I guess broad thoughts. I mean, look, we are living in the golden age for Irish golf, whereby we have a defending champion from this island. We have Shane Lowry, who's right in the mix, a really good age to maybe go and do it. He's 39 now. He grimaced when that was put to him. This is your last Masters in your 30s. He was like, jeez. But, you know, to have two very, very live contenders is brilliant for all of us. So hopefully they come through. What else do you want to mention? Who should we mention? Or final thoughts? I'll follow your lead.
Yeah, like the Irish thing, and I know we kind of hammer it home, but it won't be like this forever. It is really, really like I so many memories of watching Masters and them being such a big part of your watching experience, and having no Irish player in it. And talking to some of the older Irish journalists here, more experienced, apologies, Irish journalists, they were over here when there was no Irish interest in it, and you had to kind of pick and choose. So it is incredible to have a defending champion, Rory McIlroy, and like everywhere you go, like they played a little video before he came in yesterday. So just to reiterate that point, to have two Irish golfers here that are genuinely in contention, I think is incredible. By yesterday morning, I was telling people that not to get anybody's hopes up too high, but Rory McIlroy is definitely going to win the Masters. And then by the afternoon after his press conference, I was telling people it's over. There's no point in going out for the 4 days. But obviously, it never works like that, and that's not how Augusta goes. My own feeling early in the week was Ludvig Aberg, because in his first ever Masters 2 years ago, he finished second. First ever major 2 years ago, he finished second. Last year, he had a horrible season and he finished fifth. It's a cliche, but his game is built for around here. But he has problems lately trying to close out tournaments. So
big time.
But he's such a good golfer, and to watch him, he's so statuesque. You do wonder how he ever hits a bad shot, because his mechanics just seem so unimpeachable.
Didn't he? Sorry to interrupt and keep going. Didn't he? Wasn't it at the 11th he really came to grief and his tournament was effectively over? And I always remember he walked off smiling.
Yeah, he had a chocolate bar, and he was giving a high five to a fan. He dropped the chocolate bar on the ground, and he walked down, and he like, it was almost like he'd never even heard of the Masters. But at one stage, he was in the lead. He had a 6 that day, but he's such an impressive golfer to watch. He's so impressive. He's so statuesque, and I do think that he's going to, like, in as much as I know about golf, I do think he's going to win at least a Masters. So my theory about him was we may as well back him now when he's a big price. But it's hard not to watch Rory yesterday and think he's not going to have a good week. And it's also hard not to see his demeanour and think that if he is in the mix on Sunday, all the stuff that has happened to him in the past, that's not quite as sort of damaging anymore.
No, it's experience. I mean, the way he spoke in that press conference yesterday, he just seemed a little bit older as well. I guess he is 37. People start to age a little bit around. He's moved on to a slightly different level. And, it struck me, he was asked in the press conference about his chances or his relationship with the place, and he said, like, I think I have 10 good years left, really competitive years. And it's such a change in that for the last 2-3 years, starting to clock watch a little bit, and God, the time he has to do this is compressing, and he must have felt that too. And now suddenly when you've won, it's like, whoo, I've got 10 more chances to get a second or a third. It really does just change the feel of the pressure on him in a given moment on a given year, that now it's like he's gone from like, oh, it's getting tight, you're really running out of time, to, and you've got 10 more years.
Yeah, he's playing with house money, and he knows that himself. Like, if he never wins another golf tournament, it doesn't make any difference. He still had one of the great, and like, he loves this stuff as well. Like, we saw John Ram here a couple of years ago, Scotty Scheffler a couple of years ago, come back as the defending champion. And not that they weren't as comfortable as Rory, they weren't as natural. That's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, Rory out here, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, like, he looks to the manner born. It's like he has run through all of this stuff in his head. He was giving out the prizes to the drive, chip and putt the other day. And I've never seen somebody more at ease with the whole thing. And people asking him for interviews. And like, I was kind of saying to somebody, he must get sick of people just talking about last year. And you're like, well, hang on, for the last 15 years, he's been asked the same questions, and there were the negative connotations. And he had to come up with new ways. And because Rory is that sort of person, he did come up with new ways. He didn't just say, look, don't ask me this question, or I'll give you a cliched answer. And yesterday, he seemed really thoughtful about everything that he was being asked. There was a fantastic two-way conversation between himself and Doug Ferguson. Doug is obviously writing the thing about the flowers at Augusta, and asked him to
name them.
How many could he name? And I don't know too many sort of elite athletes that would kind of sit there and have their sort of horticultural expertise examined in quite such a thorough way. But like, everything about his nature was so good. Honestly now, and again, it comes back to the amateur psychology of it. The only sort of worry you'd have about Rory is that he's too relaxed, that he needs to be sharp and edgy to win golf tournaments. And so far this week, he's looked all kind of soft and marshmallowy. But if he can turn that dial up, and like even I like the group that he's in. Like Cameron Young is going to hit it long off the tee, and the one thing, like if you were doing a very quick diagnostic yesterday, you'd say that, yeah, Rory was leaving putts short. He didn't look that confident over putts, but his wedge play was brilliant, and he was just bombing it off the tee. I mean, bombing off the tee. Like on 7, where he ended up in the trees last year and hit that incredible shot, we were looking at where his ball landed and looking back to where the tree was, and you were saying, look, this is a different hole now. And he's sort of learned the hard way. Like he pulled it off last year, and if he gets himself into contention, I just don't see him having to do it the hard way this year. That's the difference. But look, it's a golf tournament, and you don't know. And DeChambeau can shoot 63 tomorrow, or Scheffler can shoot 64, 64.
Yeah.
And we're all scrambling to make arguments by Saturday. But that's my read of it.
No, look, it's the joy of golf. It's just unknowable. We're not going to know at the turn on Sunday who's going to win, let alone now. So.
Yeah, it is incredible. It is incredible.
Right, I think that is it. I look forward to my voicemail. I was going to say send pictures, but of course you don't have your phone out there. You can't.
Yeah, it is a mad thing. Well, there's a lot of people who are going around with. So you can bring cameras onto the course on the non-tournament days. So there are people who have digital cameras, and I actually have one as well. But they're kind of for your own. I have a picture of myself on 12, but it's one of the great things. I don't mean to sort of ham it up, because it can come across cheesy and hammy, but not having phones on the course is just, it's such a brilliant thing. And you kind of get used to it from a media point of view. You just come in every couple of hours and see, if somebody needs you or whatever it is, and you get so used to it. But the scary thing is the number of times that you automatically reach for your phone by reflex. And you're now so aware of it, like it's crazy.
I would think so. You're getting the
and this year is the last year of the gnomes, Joe, as well. A lot of people seem to be very interested in the gnomes. Yeah.
You getting
there won't be any more
imaginary vibrations in your thigh. That's my phone, all that stuff. the shakes. Brilliant. Well, listen, I don't know when we're talking. Probably next week, I presume. Unless something extraordinary happens first round, we'll chat to you Friday. But otherwise, enjoy. You were living one of the great weeks of the year, and fingers crossed in the draw. Hopefully you do get it there Monday. That'll be something.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. See you later.